Hi, everybody. It's the show with Ron. I'm Ron. Here we look at headlines. We try to understand the context. There's a lot of these headlines are trying to get us riled up about stuff, but when it comes down to it, sometimes it helps to understand what's really going on, what they're really trying to present to us. So, right off here, we've got this legendary producer, artist here, home rated, something about lawsuits, supposed alleged sex trafficking, all kinds of crazy stuff. Who knows if any of this is true? How scary would it be when, your own government funded by your own tax dollars sends, 30 cop cars and helicopters to your house to take all of your computers away. And then on the other hand, and this has nothing to do with this case, but in general, isn't it funny how, I think I'm like most people, I do all different kinds of things. I spend some time eating, working, traveling. I might do some sexual things, but I wouldn't create my whole life and put all of my resources behind any one part of my life, especially the sexual part. It's amazing how there are some people, I guess, that are wired up to be like that. I've always thought that's strange. You see the stories of these big guys that are taken down and the stuff they get up to. Very strange. Speaking of trying to take big guys down, here's Trump. Of course, Drudge, as they say, is a former kind of he's been vilified all the way back from the 90s because he forced the media to cover the Monica Lewinsky scandal, which they had decided they weren't going to do. He was long vilified as a right-wing champion, but he has turned against Trump, supposedly. He's a very enigmatic figure. So here we have a very disheveled, got to turn my air conditioning up, a very disheveled looking Trump. They always put these pictures out. And here I thought, this looks like it's a quote. I am Christ. Wow. Did Trump really say that? No, he didn't really say that. He compares himself to Christ in a bizarre tweet. I guess all of his tweets are bizarre. I'm not sure why this is such a story. Added some passages from the Bible. It wasn't too long ago where, because of the format of Twitter as having very small little bits of words, that it was considered kind of silly sloganeering. And I suppose over the past 8 years or so, it's now become newsworthy, and a single tweet can be you can whip up a whole article about it, and it's amazing something as really dumbed down as Twitter can have this importance. At one point before we had all this social media that forced you to sloganize everything, I thought the internet was really great because instead of having to listen to the news media that decided what you get to hear and then compacted that, you could go online and see the full court documents or all of the background information, or judge all these documents and information and transcripts for yourself and make your own opinion about it. But there's something about social media, TikTok, Twitter, all of this stuff that compacts everything down into nothingness, I guess, eventually. And this would be a case of Drudge, the Drudge Report, sort of piling on Trump with a false quote here. The reality is that not that much difference, but it is something to point out, I think. Biden cutting taxes. Supposedly, overall, we got UN Security Council passes Gaza ceasefire resolution. U.S. doesn't veto. You see, no matter what, how you blame TikTok for warping the American public and all this weird wave of anti-Semitism around the world, certainly the way Israel has conducted the war there has they've shot themselves in the foot. You know we have experience from Iraq, Afghanistan, all of these wars. The media is going to pounce on the way you conduct your wars. Israel knew that, and though Hamas is clearly in the wrong with the taking of the hostages and what they did, and it's amazing that the public could fall on the side of Hamas, but this is where we are. And as I mentioned before, and I think this is what underlies all of that, has to do with the Netanyahu regime, which before the Hamas incursion and the hostage taking, there had been a couple years of agitation in the media, both in the West and in Israel, that the Netanyahu regime was dismantling the legal checks and balances by their fiddling with the Supreme Court in their country. So the Western left-wing media wanted to paint him as a new fascist, as they paint about everybody. So I think there's a lot of people in power, in media, in bureaucracy, in government that says that the upshot of all this stuff in the Middle East, no matter what, they can demonize and get rid of and destroy the Netanyahu party and regime through this situation. And that's, I believe, what's also happening. Spielberg rails against anti-Semitism, history repeating itself. I think we've kind of touched on this before. What a strange circumstance that we're coming into here. This weird guy here. I don't trust any gurus who are super fit like that. I don't know why. I want my gurus to be skinny and not bulky. There's something about if you're really in the state of fulfillment, enlightenment, I would expect you wouldn't be concentrating on your body. At least that's my excuse. That's my excuse for the way I look. Okay. What else do we have here? Forensic psychiatrist fears Trump's changes in gait may signal dementia. Oh, and what a surprise. Of course, the ultra anti-Trump, really Republican salon would always have be the drumbeat of this sort of thing. What this means is this is a person who is essentially, although I'm sure they would deny it, diagnosing Trump from afar by looking at the media coverage of Trump to make this diagnosis. And especially, what a surprise that a super left-wing organization makes this negative diagnosis of Trump right in the election year, right when the Democrats are really working hard to counter the I guess the videos that we've all seen of Biden and how his age has finally come out into the open in the media. And this could possibly be true. It certainly could be possibly true. And from a certain perspective, you could say Salon is doing God's work by trying to do everything they can to swing the election to one side or another, or help one candidate over another. But the syndrome here is, and I've mentioned this before on the channel. Anytime, especially it's mainly the United States, when the United States has somebody who's a villain, Saddam Hussein, Osama bin Laden, whoever. I can't remember the original guy, the one-eyed guy who was the head of Afghanistan. When we have someone who we posit as a villain, our bad guy, our adversary, in the media, always immediately has to say that that person is in physical decline, failing, probably going to die in 6 months. They did this Ayatollah Khomeini. They did this with all the leaders of North Korea. Somehow, it's soothing to the mentality of everybody to say that the corruptness or the innate evil of all of the leaders who we say are bad guys somehow extends to their physical form, and thus they're falling apart. And we've seen many, many cases where, probably almost in all of the cases where the Western media, when they say that all of our adversaries are physically decaying, it's actually not true. So this is a symptom and a syndrome of our culture and our society. And it may be, this could be with Trump as well, a desire to say he's falling apart in the same way, right along with the fact that they want to say that, to say, well, you think Biden's bad? Well, Trump's just as bad. Ha, ha, ha. We've heard this with the way the press has conceptualized this age situation by not acknowledging all of the video clips of Biden acting senile, but instead of saying, oh, well, what's happening is that people that say that 81 years old, 81 is a high number. Well, Trump is 77. That's almost the same. So thus Biden's not too old. But in the real life, people aren't saying that. They just see clips that show Biden appearing senile. So anyway, I've gone over that before, but that's an interesting thing when we can look into how, as a society, we want to look at and conceptualize our villains. End of luxury. Gucci slowdown sounds alarm. I don't know if younger people understand this, As far back as the 80s, people were not interested in buying designer clothes like this with a brand name and showing their bling. We didn't even have that word then, to everyone. This accelerated. The 80s sort of opened the West's eyes to conspicuous consumption in a new way, maybe that hadn't appeared since the 50s. We had all the supermodels, we had the awareness of brands, and then by the time we get into the internet days and now social media, people want to show how rich they are. They want to preen, they want to peacock by broadcasting these brands that are available to buy, even when, in previous decades, you would just assume this is for rich people with too much money, and I'm a practical person and I wouldn't need to buy all this Louis Vuitton. But now just average people who don't even have the money buy those brands. But all things come to an end. They are cyclical. It will not go out forever. Perhaps this attitude is ebbing a bit. What is this? I didn't see this headline. I don't know if this is worthwhile. And I'm going to turn on the JavaScript. Watch out. Okay, it's BBC. Foreign government hacking, or foreign country. Who knows? And we've got the stuff with the British royal family. I thought the funny thing about this was how they kind of tried to cover up the diagnosis of Kate. But I don't know. To me, from afar, as an American, it doesn't seem to be too much of a crisis. It certainly is it's contemptuous to put out those fake pictures like they did, but they have a very clear line of secession, and the different kids are, I suppose the other way you could look at it is how funny that they have such a crisis and a mess, a screw up in the way they handled it so soon after the Queen died, as if perhaps her system, the people that surrounded her, were very more adept at handling these things. Deep fake. I just don't know where this will lead. This is quite amazing. So actually, a news organization made some deep fake of a politician to show how bad it could be. I wonder what the end point is, whether people will just have to stop believing their eyes, stop believing the media. Uh, I, it's amazing that these systems appear to be largely unregulated. But then on the other hand, every time I talk about regulation on here, I do get messages, even privately, from all younger people saying, well, you're just an old person. I don't want you to be regulating my tech, or saying I can't play with these things, or that only authorities, a media authority, a government can decide what's the right thing. That seems to be antithetical to what I say most of the time. And that's a good point. I don't really have a comeback for that. But anyway, we'll see how that works out. Trump and his lawsuits, Boeing having trouble. I don't know why I laughed at this. Furious farmers shut down London with angry tractor protest. I'm glad I haven't had much cause in my life to have to protest because of my job circumstances. I am thankful for that. This is more about this social media stuff. DeSantis signing one of the country's most restrictive social media bans for minors. So this says 14 parental permission for 14 and 15-year-olds to be on social media. I think there's enough evidence, particularly in TikTok, of all these crazy kids who are faking Tourette's. You might want to do this. Although, so you can argue that what we see, maybe these crazy young kids who are faking mental illness or, passing around or creating anti-Semitic memes, they might be a vast, small group of people who would not be indicative of, of most young people, and thus it's silly to ban that. But I think this does signal the way forward. That it appears that social media is creating an uninformed populace, and there are I believe some articles that talk about this as well. On the other hand, and this is I think the main point. Just in the 50s there was the corruption of the young by comic books. And they had the Comic Code Authority, and for things that now there were some gruesome comics, but now we kind of laugh that comics could destroy or corrupt our youth in hindsight. But at the time, there were congressional hearings, it seemed a big deal. You always have to wonder if this sort of situation where society panics over something like social media, or when they panicked about satanic, there was like a satanic panic in the 80s that everyone took very seriously, and now we're just like, this is crazy. This is insane. It's difficult to step out of our cultural time and see if these bands like this might be viewed as crazy in just a few decades from now. Men lonely, disconnected, can men's groups help? This was another article I thought. I thought that being a man, you are alone and lonely and disconnected. Even my best friends, I don't want to touch them like this. I don't. Are we creating a touchy-feely new era of men who show their emotions? We had sensitive men in the 80s, but even my best friends now are sort of like acquaintances, sort of business acquaintances. And the biggest emotion that I would ever share with them would be like, you know, oh, it took 3 days to do my taxes this year. See, that's an emotion to a man. That's or at least a man from the era I came from. So, I could this be, media taking a very, very small, vanishingly small group of people and who have been amplified by social media and saying they're the norm? Or maybe young people are different. Maybe some young people, if there's any young people out there who can tell me, is this real or not? I know it's been brought up that because of the way women have been energized to be able to view any interaction with men as abuse or consent at one point, and then, at some later date become disgruntled and withdraw all consent for anything that happened in the historical past. It might put pressure on young men, but I don't know. Let me know if you have any insight on that. Mountain lion. Mountain lion kills man in California for the first time in 30 years. I don't know why I always look at these articles. I just think it's interesting to know how we do live and interact with nature still, despite all of our best attempts to stomp it out. Anyway, that kind of let me show a new video here for you. My book. I got a book. It's in the stores here, and let me show you my new video about it. Here we go. Disillusioned by the promises of the modern world, young people make their way to Bangkok and then on to the furthest places they can find. There are still unknown places. And I just heard my book is now available at Kinokuniya branches at M Quarter, Central World, and Siam Paragon. I really wanted them to carry it, and it's in literature, which is cool, so this is another dream come true for me. Read it and let me know what you think, please. Thanks. Okay, that's my book. It's also on Amazon Kindle, and if you read it, like I say, let me know what you think. I'm really excited for it to be out there. It does play into some of the themes I think that I talk about here on the channel, almost unconsciously. The idea of disillusionment with the modern world and its promises, and people who are tuning out of the world again and going off to unknown places to maybe not find themselves, but to find out what the world, what life is really about. So anyway, that's the video for today. That's our show for today. Tune in next time, and we'll look at the headlines again. And I think doing this, sometimes it can calm us down and make us not so panicked for all of these causes that they want us to be a part of. See you tomorrow.